They told me like when they went outside that their helmets are basically like easy bake oven, and if the sun hits it, it's only a matter of time before their head turns into little raisins.
And then I hear this woman on the megaphone, "Wait, stop!" And she's like, "You could have been shot."
Actually, him in bed with the robot was his idea.
There's a certain realism, you know, in the photographs that I always want to try to capture.
That roof was actually dangerous looking, and I can't believe like a big Hollywood director would agree to stand on this ledge.
I've had the rare opportunity to meet many amazing photographers who move through the different landscapes to create powerful images. I'm always inspired by how these images transform the way we see people and understand the world. A great photograph needs no explanation, but on Capture, these incredible people tell the story of creating their most memorable images. I'm Mark Seliger, and this is Capture.
Welcome to Capture, and in my studio today I have the designer and photo enthusiast, Stephen Allen. So thank you so much for joining me, and the very talented fellow Texan photographer, Mr. Peter Yang. Thank you so much for coming. Stephen, you studied photography and film too, right, and design?
I did. I went to an art high school here in the city, but it was kind of a funny thing how I got into photography because my mother was getting her hair cut at this salon called Nardi on 57th Street, and the photographer had like quit that day, and they used to do these before and after shots. So they said, "Well, take the pictures. This is what we'll do. We'll pay for the film. You could use our darkroom. We'll give you the key, and you know, take it from there." So I thought, okay, I'll do this. This will be great. So they paid for the film. I used to do these shots for them. But then I had, you know, as a kid, I had access to this. It was a penthouse studio on 57th Street with a darkroom.
Peter, when you first started to connect a little bit to the history of photography, who were your influences?
When I first started, I only knew and I wanted to be a journalist, or a documentary photographer. So Eugene Smith and Eugene Richards and Eli Reed, a lot of the Gary Winogrand, the sort of the black and white documentary type pictures was what I was really inspired by. And I you know, worked at a paper and shot spot news and documentary for years. Then I realized I wanted to affect my picture more, and it's not ethical necessarily to move things around. So before I jumped that shark, I kind of went the portrait route. And it was really a great way to start out because I wasn't used to moving things and affecting things. So I think a lot of my early things felt more real. And it wasn't later on until I figured out production and all that. And starting with photography, I think Avedon influenced me a lot. And I didn't even understand what it was. I just thought white backgrounds were really cool, and I figured out how to do that, and I thought black and white was cool.
Kind of brings up this series too.
Yeah.
You went down during Occupy Wall Street and made a series of portraits that are all in white.
I owe a lot of it to my wife and my studio manager, who are both very socially kind of driven people, and we sit around and kind of talk about what's going on, and it was actually my wife's idea that said you should go out and photograph these guys. And I was like, brilliant. So we went out there, and thought it would be pretty easy, but it was really hard to set up a white background. We'd set up, and the first round of cops were cool with it, and the second round was like, get out of here. We ended up like bargaining with this guy to move his tent, and I'm sitting on a stack of liberal, radical library books because I can't get any further back. And we're like under these trees, and my silk is getting crapped on all day. And we're constantly breaking it up and setting it down because we're in like a pathway. We're right in like the middle of all the tents and all that. It's super refreshing just to pick people off the street, and not, when I'm doing celebrity, I always have an internal timer in my head, you know, and I don't want to reach the point where I'm told to stop, you know, and it's always figuring out when that is. And with these guys, there is no timer. It's just really get to talk and hang out and kind of hear, they're all really passionate about something. So just to hear their stories.
So, Stephen, I was reading a little bit about, your research too in your world, and you draw a lot from photography books.
We do at work. We have tons and tons, and our design team is always referencing. We did our collection a couple seasons ago was based on this book, Yosemite in the 60s, and it was these great pictures,
Tell me about that book.
It was just really, I think it was these guys that were like climbers. They like I imagine they went to Berkeley and they would like climb on the weekends, and they would wear like white turtlenecks under blazers. And so we built the collection around this. Really, the book was sort of the initial theme, and then when we started thinking about the women's collection, it was more kind of like, okay, what would the girlfriend of this guy be like,
You think as your relationship with photography has, understanding that detail has really kind of influenced the way you feel as a designer?
Yeah, I think it does. And part of me is always just sort of like, you want to get in there and just sort of like, can I just borrow the camera for a minute? I just want to take, but I kind of let that go a long time ago.
So you don't like do your own lookbooks?
No, but I would like to do that. But I feel like I would need a good assistant because it's just been so long since
I'm around. If I can get like 20% off on a couple of shirts, I'm in.
Deal.
This is something very current, your photographs for Rolling Stone of Daft Punk. So this is a pretty big feeling photograph. You want to tell us a little bit about the making of that?
They ended up being like really cool guys. I was thinking ahead of time that they wouldn't be as involved and interactive as they were. And once we got there, the only funny thing is that they told me like when they went outside that their helmets are basically like easy bake ovens, and if the sun hits it, it's only a matter of time before their head turns into little raisins. So we had to kind of watch out about how long they were in the sun. We were shooting like in an airstrip just outside LA, so it was pretty spicy out there. But I had gotten this like giant disco ball because we ended up running the shot where they're leaning on it. But they were all about it. We had it hoisted up, and they were like levitating it, and they were pushing it up the hill, and they were super into it, and just really cool guys.
That was a really nice cover. One of the areas in photography that I think is, become such a big part of our cultural world is obviously fashion and fashion photography. And from your experience, what makes a great fashion picture?
It's interesting because whenever I'm watching if I'm watching a shoot, I always find that the best photographers in fashion are the ones that have this dialogue with the subject. And it's nothing to do with their portfolio or how good they are at lighting, or because all that stuff kind of works itself out usually. But I find that
direction, you mean? Just giving?
Yeah, just where the model feels. Because for me, when we capture that for our brand, it just seems so relevant, because it's not the type of brand. I think some brands are more like, like the model is just sort of like doing these things, but there's a certain realism, in the photographs that I always want to try to capture.
It sounds like the concept behind doing a great fashion picture is being able to really illustrate who this person is and to have a connection to them. And so you connect to not only to them, but to the clothing and to the lifestyle and to the whole idea. Peter, I first learned about Mr. Yang when really I think the big cover for Rolling Stone was the cover of, was it The Senator at that point?
Yeah, I think he had just gotten the Democratic nomination.
This was such a candid off moment for a politician. I actually know the story behind it because I have the good fortune of knowing the creative director, Jody Peckman, was actually sitting below and talking to him and getting him to look down. Is that right?
I'm gonna go with what she says because.
Well, why don't you tell us what really happened?
I mean, I don't even remember if I was like wearing pants that day, because at his shoot, like it's just such a blur, and people always ask what I said to him to make him laugh. And the only thing I truly remember is that I took the picture. But to Jodi's credit, the other thing she did, and no one's ever said this to me before, is she said at the beginning, first of all, she had us turn all the lights down. She was playing Grateful Dead. So it just changed the mood, because we were in kind of the ugliest room of all time. And it smelled like horse crap in there, because we were in this, like the North Carolina State Fair. But she said, Peter, you got 10 minutes with them, but if you can wrap up faster, you look a lot cooler.
Yeah, that's nice little pressure for you, 10 minutes and then that.
If you can do it in 3, you're like golden.
Stephen, you were talking a little bit about your experience in Hawaii, in shooting in Hawaii. And you showed me these very unlikely photographs from a helicopter, an aerial. How did you come about shooting aerials?
Yeah, actually the pilot had asked if we wanted the doors on or off, and this is the first time I was in a helicopter. So I was like, maybe let's leave them on.
Leave them on for the first ride.
guy was like one of these, I don't know, military, sort of like, I'm gonna do fancy stuff and I'm gonna give you the real tour of Hawaii, you know, and so there was a waterfall that you can kind of see way in the distance, and we're getting closer and closer and closer, and then basically we're so close that the water is spraying onto the windshield.
It's an amazing experience when you're above the world with a camera. This, I worked with Iggy. I thought this was a different experience for you, Peter. How's that work for you in terms of being, you know, on a looser, more journalistic side?
Well, I shot this a few years ago where it was really atypical to go journalistic, and it's something I do more now and really enjoy, because sometimes the loss of control is what's great about it. And we hopped into his car. I'm not so good with classic cars, but it was convertible and it was about the size of 3 cars. And my assistant was in the back with just a flash on a stick, and we just kind of cruised down the streets of little Havana. Nobody knows or cares who he is, you know, out there. So we were just able to cruise down the street and
just you and Iggy Pop hanging out in little Havana.
Me and Iggy, yeah, totally. So it was a blast.
Stephen, tell me a little bit about, we were speaking earlier, and you were explaining your affinity for a Rolly, which I have 2.
Using a Rolly was my favorite camera by far, because I felt like the subjects were really off. They weren't on guard, you know? And I think that as soon as you go like this, right, and you're looking at someone, there's like another layer there where I'm being photographed. Whereas when, you know, with the Rolly, it was just sort of here, and you're just having that conversation, like you said, and it's just kind of like, it could be in those off moments where you're, you know, you're just, they're not aware that they're even being photographed, but it's like perfect, and what else? Yeah, you know.
And you don't remove yourself from the experience of being a photographer. You just, it could be a quick, you know, adjustment down below, but basically it's kind of what you were talking about too, Peter. Your focus is still always present with the subject.
Yeah, and now, I mean, most of my pictures are just shot with my phone, because it's just, but for the same reason, you know, you can kind of get in there and it's just sort of like have that conversation, and just, you know, half of them are not going to come out or whatever, but the ones that do, again, you're able to kind of capture that, you know.
Interesting. This was a shoot for Wired of Jimmy Fallon, and which is, it's a great shoot.
We worked with a great prop stylist, Sean Patrick Anderson, who helped us put this robot together from scratch. You know, it's all sorts of mannequins cut up and car parts and all sorts of things.
The John and Yoko Annie reference is seems like a real Jimmy Fallon idea. Was that yours or his?
That was our idea, actually. Him in bed with the robot was his idea, actually, and this was kind of our idea. And initially, I was really set on him playing the John part instead of the Yoko part. And then they nixed it, and then in hindsight, it was probably better this way.
Stephen, you know, you have a ubiquitous world in stores, and you know, lots and lots of collaborations with different companies and designers. Tell me a little bit about how that works for you in terms of your world.
I mean, for me, I guess I always want to find someone that can do something that we feel like we want to get better at that. You know, like there's certain companies that are just great at what they do, and you know, we can do it, but to partner with them, you know, so Nike, obviously, you know, for footwear was a great one, and we did the same thing with Levi's Dockers for, you know, men's pants, and then I collaborated with Uniqlo to do a collection, and that was kind of fun too, because I got to meet Mr. Yanai is the chairman of Uniqlo, and he walked in the room and everyone was just like, it was like a general came in, you know, and everyone was quiet, and then he laughed and he says, I like it. You know why I like it? Because you think like a retailer. He's like, we're gonna sell a lot of these, you know, and was
You spoke his
nice.
language.
I spoke his language, yeah.
Yeah. I should tell you that Peter, I don't think he did on purpose, is wearing a Lucky shirt.
Yeah, well, I was in Venice a few years ago and stumbled upon your store, and I was just trying on shirts. And as someone who, especially growing up in Texas, like everything was just weirdly sized on me, I tried on this one shirt and looked in the mirror, and it was like, today, sir, you are a handsome man. So I was pumped about it, and I bought it. And then so whenever I had like meetings, I'd put on my shirt and feel like kind of good about myself, and then it just kind of became my lucky shirt eventually.
Oh, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
love that story.
Yeah, no, it's
like a little
awesome.
commercial or something.
So this is the part of our show where we have a fishbowl. We call this the fishbowl section. And we pass the fishbowl around and we ask each other a question. Stephen, why don't I let you do the honors first, and you can ask Mr. Yang a quickie.
All right. What's your most important tool besides the camera itself?
I think it's my personality, I guess. I just don't take things too seriously, and I think I make people comfortable because I'm self-deprecating and kind of weird, and I get a lot of great pictures just from me saying nonsensical things and people making funny faces because they're like, what the hell? So yeah, so that's my tool, my weird brain.
So I think you can ask Stephen now a question. I think it's only
Okay.
fair.
All right, pick a good one here. And Stephen, what's the most dangerous situation you've been in to get a photo?
Actually, I have one of those. I was with my parents, and we were in Washington, D.C., and the White House, it was Christmas. There was a huge tree in the Christmas lawn, and I thought it would be really great to sort of get a picture of the White House glowing off of one of these massive crystal Christmas balls. And so I went in there and I'm positioning the camera and, you know, on B or whatever, because there's not that much light, so it takes like 30 seconds to snap. And then I hear this woman on the megaphone, wait, stop. You know, and like I don't know, I just freaked out and I started running. And this woman was running after me, and my parents were there, and she was like, oh my God, and she was just crying and hysterical. And she's like, you could have been shot. Like, we were really, because I crossed over, it was just dumb. I don't know.
Crossed the barrier?
I crossed some barrier, and yeah, I was in Secret Service territory.
What was your most dangerous situation?
I had a couple. One was I was at the Belmont Stakes somehow, and I ended up crossing. I was there like at the 8th race, which is the main one, and I didn't know there was a 9th race. So I was crossing over. I heard a simultaneous roar of the crowd, and then horses coming. So the horse trampling, and another The dangerous one, I think, was actually, it happens just to be this one, the Danny Boyle picture. That roof was actually dangerous looking, and I can't believe like a big Hollywood director would agree to stand on this ledge. This far from actually falling off the ledge.
Really? What was below him?
Broadway. Oh, well, over here is the roof that I'm on, and over here is Broadway. But I'm on the edge of a ledge right here, and I knew we were in trouble when he's like, hold on, stop the shoot. You're gonna have to get away from the ledge if we're gonna keep the shoot going. And I was looking over, and I was right on the edge, and kind of my Apple box was on the ground, and I was going all around, and as my assistant said, I was kind of Mr. Magooing it a little bit. So everyone had cold sweats when I was watching over, and I think I was a lot closer to falling off there.
This will be to Peter.
Oh, okay.
All right, Peter, what living person would you like to photograph the most that you haven't already photographed?
Number one is Bruce Lee, but he's passed on. I think it would be incredible to photograph Tom Waits. I've been a huge fan of his music and just images of him for a really long time. And I think he'd be like incredible to collaborate with. And I just got my Anton Corbijn Tom Waits book.
How is it?
Finally, it's amazing. Yeah, it's so many pictures I haven't seen, and just a really beautiful book.
Peter Yang, thank you. You're an amazing photographer. So glad to
Thank you so much
have you
for
on the
having
show.
me.
You are an inspiration for a lot of people. And
Super honored to be here. Thanks so much.
Stephen Allen, thank you so much. You're a great artist, and we're very lucky to be able to have you on the show. So thank you for coming and being a part of Capture.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was one of the most fun things that I've ever gotten to do, was be guest editor at Vanity Fair. You know, it's one of those things that you throw out there as a suggestion. Why don't you let me edit one? You just don't think they're going to let you do it.
This piece here was 1992 or something. I think I had Photoshop 2.0. I was the only photographer that I knew that had Photoshop.
The best part of the day, though, was in order to get that attitude from Steve Martin, you know, he was, pretending to be the tour guide. He started doing the voice that he does like in The Jerk.
You were going into a world where all the dysfunction, all the pain, all the stuff was like right there. And every cliche that I'd ever seen in a prison movie was there.
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant,
I'm Eric Ripper,
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman,
the host of On the Table.
the host of Across the Board.
host of Artist Talk,
Host of Hooked Up.
host of the show Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedback, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.